Frey nodded in response, giving a comforting response. That's right. He seems conscious and doesn't have any serious injuries. If he's just exhausted, he'll be back to normal with some rest. Unless they defeat Ivaraje, they won't be able to rest easy, even though they knew. This, they had no choice but to speak cheerfully. If I thought about it deeply, I felt like I was going to give up before the fight even began. To prevent this from happening, I was trying to improve my mood even a little. Feldway was about to take a step forward, but stopped in his tracks. It seems like we were suddenly thwarted. The fact that they couldn't be happy, even though the situation had supposedly improved, gave an idea of the extent of the despair everyone felt. I'll give it back to you, so let's play some more. Feldway was also hesitant. However, I had no choice but to move forward. Feldway's pressure from behind was dangerous. Maybe he was scared. That's how I felt, and the option of running away was blocked. You said you couldn't win against me. Feldway wanted to complain, but naturally, he didn't have the courage to say it out loud. Rather than doing something like that, it would have been better to face Ivaraje. Rimuru, please come quickly. With this prayer in his heart, Feldway threw himself into the battle against Ivaraje. Meanwhile, Rumina's finished healing Milim with holy magic and declared that her injury was fine. All wounds have healed, but please refrain from further fighting. It's no problem, I can still fight. Milim answered with fighting spirit, but Rumina's gave her a stern look. Don't be so ridiculous. You've been going on a rampage for so long, and fatigue is building up in your body. Your body has been repeatedly destroyed and regenerated, and even if it looks like it's back to normal, it's still fragile. You need to get plenty of rest and get your blood and flesh circulating, otherwise you won't be able to fully recover. It was a sharp observation, but it was true. If Milim activated her ultimate skill, Wrathful King Satanale, and went into Stampede, she would be able to absorb any external material and infinitely regenerate her body. It wouldn't matter if it broke, so it wouldn't be a problem even if she fought recklessly. Of course, it would be a big problem in another sense, but that's a different story. Currently, Milim is not relying on her ultimate skill, Wrathful King Satanale. In other words, the amount of energy recovered is very weak, although the maximum amount is large. It is generally enormous. The energy that was wasted fighting Ivaraje was not going to be recovered so easily. Even Milim understands that. However, we cannot stop here. Among the warriors present, Milim boasted exceptional strength. The only ones standing next to her were Feldway and Feldway. Even Feldway had not yet fully recovered. As Rumina's had said, even though her injuries had healed, her energy density had still been reduced by about 40%. Working together with Tensura and Obra, they were doing their best to suppress the demonic aura that Ivaraje was emitting. By the way, although Obra has recovered a little, she is still about 70% exhausted, and her complexion is still pale. Even though Tensura was over 80% exhausted, she looked calm. In this case, Tensura, who was tired, twalled, troubled, exhausted, and yet didn't let anyone know it, was the one who should have been praised as a model lady. And so, Feldway was now facing off against Ivaraje all by himself. They are fighting better than expected, but their fighting style is aimed at buying time. That was the correct answer, Milim thought. If they waited, Rimuru and Guy would join them. The real action would begin after that, so there was no need to rush now. However, Milim had a bad feeling. Ivaraje is playing. However, what if something happens that makes you take it seriously? Milim instinctively knew that she had to defeat him before that happened. And what about Feldway? I understood this after actually fighting Ivaraje. This guy is learning my techniques. Ivaraje was growing at an alarming rate. They take on human form, acquire martial arts skills, and utilize and develop them. It seems that he even learned about Milim and Chloe's fighting style from his time. As their opponent, he is now applying that knowledge to his fight against Veldora. If he were to grow anymore, it might become difficult for him to fight alongside Rimuru. Or rather, if it was discovered that he had strengthened the enemy, Veldora would undoubtedly be scolded. No, I must avoid that. Veldora was tempted to just go at it with all his might just this once, but he held himself back. He decided that it was best to maintain the status quo while trying not to provoke her as much as possible. Milim thought they should defeat them right away, while Veldora decided to wait until everyone was gathered. Opinions were divided, but in the end, the only strategy available was to maintain the status quo. It was unclear whether Milim's full-power Dragon Star Explosion Flame Drago Nova would be enough to bring down Ivaraje. Veldora, do you have any techniques that can kill him in one hit? Milim, ignoring Rumina's warnings, asked as she stood alongside Veldora. No, I have a wide range of techniques, but they are no match for your dragon. Star Explosion Flame Drago Nova. Veldora also has some incredibly powerful techniques, but in terms of maximum power, they are no match for Dragon Star Explosion Flame and Drago Nova. Veldora can be quite confident, but his self-analysis is accurate. Upon hearing this, Milim had no choice but to make a difficult decision. In that case, it seems best not to get involved carelessly. So, this time, Veldora and Milim teamed up to face off against Ivaraje. Despite that, Ivaraje seems to be having fun. Far from being relaxed, it seemed they didn't really feel threatened. Veldora stepped forward and thrust with a straight punch, which Milim used as a diversion to get behind him, aiming for the moment when Ivaraje's body stiffened. After receiving Veldora's punch, Milim grabbed him from behind. The plan was to restrain him and then use Veldora's abundant mystical wave, fertile paradox, to capture him. However, it doesn't work. The moment Veldora tried to activate abundant mystic wave, fertile paradox, Ivaraje's own magical power exploded, blowing Milim away. Veldora hurriedly dodged, but was hit by Ivaraje, who jumped out of the blast and slammed him into hard rock at a speed faster than the speed of sound. Hard rock, which is thousands of times stronger than concrete, was reduced to ashes like sand, showing just how powerful it was. Grrr, blowing me away is such a humiliation. Ouch, that was awful. This guy is getting really good at reading the situation. If it gets to this point, it might even become difficult to buy time. Even though Milim and Veldora challenged together, they were easily defeated. Although we can still fight, it is no longer a matter of maintaining the status quo. Velgrind, Obra, and Tensura, who had been suppressing the demonic aura emanating from Ivaraje, also had grim expressions on their faces as they felt the pressure of the swelling presence. And at that moment, something fell from the sky. It was Dino with a large hole in his chest. Milim was the first to notice. That's Dino. La. Veldora also nodded. In fact, he was good friends with Veldora and Dino. He even invited them to his room in the labyrinth and read manga together. So when Veldora noticed that Dino was injured, his eyes sharpened. Dino is also supported by two women. Was it Pico and Gracia? It seems their companions are with them, but it seems something has happened. Rimuru, who was monitoring the entire battlefield, also noticed the presence of the three at almost the same time as Milim and Veldora. He also noticed not only Dino's condition, but also the panicked looks of Pico and Gracia, and realized that something strange had happened. Dino is strong. Even Pico and Gracia were strong enough that there was no way they could be defeated by any of the cryptids out there. It would be one thing if they were facing Velzard, but I hadn't heard that dino and the others were heading towards the former Eurazania. However, even though Dino and the others were under Benimaru's command, they were not his subordinates. Even if he slacked off again, it wouldn't be a problem since I didn't have high expectations. However, if something unusual were to happen, that would be a different story. Veldura-sama, leave this to us. As soon as he shouted that, Benimaru took action. He quickly accepted Dino and the others, protecting them with a barrier. Veldura turned towards Ivaraje. I wanted to give it my all and defeat him, but if I couldn't win, it would be troublesome. I had released the stress from my fight with Milim by defeating Kakashi, but it seemed like my patience was being tested at an incredible rate. However, I have to be patient here. Ivaraje looked like a beautiful woman, so Veldura was reluctant to hit her with all his might. In that sense, it was probably Veldura's role to put his life on the line and hold Ivaraje back. I'll do it. A job this big won't be satisfied with just 3 plates of pudding. It was a cry from the soul. Veldura prepared himself to be hit and began to move to restrain Ivaraje. With the support of Pico and Gracia, Dino was protected. Rumina's holy magic was activated and healed Dino. It was an amazingly fast healing that lived up to the name of God's miracle. I wish I could have slept longer. Idiot. If it weren't for Rumina's, you might never have woken up. It's true. I'm so glad to be alive. Gracia yelled in exasperation, while Pico burst into tears. Dino, who was trying to lighten the mood, regrets that it was a mistake. So what happened? Benimaru asked directly. Well, that's... Just as Dino was about to answer, something fell from the sky again. This time it happened so fast that no one could react in time. By the time they noticed, a crater had appeared in the ground. Benimaru braced himself, thinking it was an attack, but it seemed that something was different. When the dust cleared, someone was lying in the center of the crater. Why you? Benimaru looked on guard and observed the situation. It was Feldway, an overwhelmingly powerful man and the mastermind behind everything. He had failed to destroy the sacred tree, been defeated by Diablo, and disappeared. This information had been shared, but it was unlikely that he would have been in such a terrible state. Oh, I thought Feldway was the mastermind behind it. I can't believe it. What happened? Velgrind was confused, while Obra was astonished. Everyone had a bad feeling in their hearts. Feldway was still alive, but his body was beginning to disintegrate. If things continue like this, there will be only a short time left before they completely disappear. Could it be that Rimuru did this? Hinata muttered. Although she said it herself, Hinata herself didn't think so at all. In Rimuru's case, if his strength was such that he could overwhelm his opponents to this extent, she thought he would capture him alive and hold him accountable. Even if the outcome was the death penalty, he would start by making them admit their guilt. No matter how you looked at it, Feldway had just suffered a fatal blow. His body was beginning to disintegrate from the extremities, scattering into particles. As he was a spiritual life form, it was possible that he could be reincarnated or even possess another body to extend his life, but it seemed that Feldway's heart had also sustained serious damage. Hey, did you even disobey me? Dino asked as he picked up Feldway. Feldway responded with self-mockery. HMPH, even though I had been praying so much for his resurrection, this is still a lame story. That is a positive statement. Dino was surprised and stared at Feldway. Pico and Gracia were also looking at Feldway with complicated expressions. However, Dino remembered that this was no time for such leisurely behavior, and looked up at the sky in a panic. It was past noon. In the aftermath of the fierce fighting on the ground, The sky is clear and cloudless. I saw a tiny dot. There's no way they'll let me off the hook. What should we do? I don't think we have a chance of winning. Well, it's impossible. We're so powerless that we don't even bother to try our best. Seeing Dino and the others having this conversation, Obra also realized that something was up. Or rather, Dino and the others thought it was pointless to oppose him, and when it came to someone who could defeat Feldway, Ivaraje might meet the criteria, but he was here, so that was not the case. This limited the possibilities. I don't think it's possible, but is it Lord Veldanava? Everyone's eyes were focused on Obra as she spoke. Dino and the others looked away uncomfortably. That was the answer. Sorry, Obra, I was unfit to be a leader. Feldway apologized. Obra was shocked by this and realized that the worst had happened. It was a major incident, with the stubborn Feldway admitting his fault. There is no doubt that Veldanava has been revived, and this is the result. Dino's serious injuries and Feldway's near death were all Veldanava's doing. Upon realizing this, Obra also fell silent. A heavy atmosphere began to hang in the air. Before anyone could be surprised by God's resurrection, everyone realized that something terrible had happened. Naturally, everyone was shaken and unsure of how to respond to this. I have one question. Do you know what your brother's purpose is? Velgrind began to speak. They say the world is reborn. It seems that they discard the failed work and create something new. Dino and Feldway answered at the same time. I thought so. Velgrind nodded. That's a big problem. Ruminus spat out the words. It's not something that can be summed up in just one sentence, but that was the only way I could describe the situation. So, what are you all planning to do? The meaning of that question was that he wanted to confirm everyone's will as to whether they would obey the Creator God or resist him. This is no longer something that can be forced. If we follow God's will, there is nothing that can stop it. For those like Benimaru and Hinata who had no direct connection to him, whether he was a god or not was of no concern to them. However, to Velgrind and Veldora he is an older brother, and to Obra he is her biological father. It is not a relationship that can be easily cut of, so it is no wonder that she is troubled. That said, time is limited. Although there was no sign of Veldanava making a move, the time for a decision was approaching. Ruminas and the others had no hesitation in becoming enemies. He had no intention of letting the world he had cherished and protected be destroyed so easily. He was determined to assert himself firmly, even if the other party was the Creator God. As for me, I will just obey Rimuru-sama. Even if I don't listen, he'll probably say something like, "You're trying to destroy our world. Seriously, stop messing around." Benimaru spoke with a wry smile. Hinata nodded at this. That's certainly what he would say. Besides, I have no intention of just following his orders. I think it's strange that just because someone is a god, they can do whatever they want. Partly due to her family background, Hinata has complicated feelings about the concept of God. Rumina's was an exception, as she was both her savior and friend. Following Benimaru and Hinata, Tensura laughed. There is no need to worry. We simply obey Rimuru-sama. The Tensura doesn't waver. To begin with, the demons are a naturally occurring race and have no loyalty to the Creator God. They have likes and dislikes, and while Guy and others have formed personal friendships with them, there are no obligations. Ultimately, it is up to you to choose your state of being through free will. So Tensura had made up her mind. Most likely, Karara and Ultima had made up their minds as well. I'm up to Masayuki. Velgrind also has a selfish personality, so her standards for judgment are always the same. Just follow the decision of your loved one. Masayuki was suddenly faced with an important decision, but he remained calm. Some say that the capacity has already been exceeded. With a bodhisattva-like smile, he empties his mind. It was a technique that Masayuki had acquired as a way to avert his eyes from the horrors of the battlefield. I don't want to die yet. Masayuki answered with eyes that seemed to have opened to enlightenment. That was all Masayuki wanted. If they had come this far and God were to destroy the world, all their hard work up until now would have been for nothing. Masayuki thought that this was unlikely to happen. Also, I felt like I heard a voice deep in my heart. Has that guy gone mad? I'm going to have to punch him and wake him up. This was the will of his past self, someone who seemed to be Rudra, that was appealing to Masayuki. There was no reason to oppose that opinion, so Masayuki decided to comply. Obediently. With this, Velgren's policy was also decided. If her brother had really resurrected and decided to destroy the world, then all fate would be sealed. But even so, she could live for the ones she loved until the very last moment. That was all Velgren needed. I'll be with you until the end, Masayuki. Yeah, that's right. I think I'll try a little harder. Masayuki thought that he wasn't as scary as he'd expected. One reason for this is that the story is too grand, with stories like the resurrection of God. But more than that, having Velgrand with me is a big deal. I was using my luck to the fullest, and I also felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that if this didn't work, then nothing else would. It was a feeling akin to resignation, but Masayuki somehow felt that things would work out somehow. That's probably, hey everyone, thank you for your hard work, everyone. Perhaps it was because I heard a carefree voice say this. Eme. To make things easier, I turned back into a slime and, still being held in Diablo's arms, I teleported towards the battlefield accompanied by Guy and Velzard. It's harder than Shin and a little uncomfortable, but it's extremely stable. Or rather, I'm scared of myself because I'm starting to get used to it. As soon as he arrived, he jumped off Diablo. At the same time, he took on a human form and greeted everyone, saying, "Hello everyone, thank you for your hard work." Eme. Greetings are the basis of everything. I wasn't late or anything, so there was no need to make excuses. However, I felt a bit uncomfortable, as if I had joined the party late when everyone else was working hard. Greetings were also useful, in the sense of disguising this. In fact, any time I had to think about such things disappeared the moment I witnessed the devastation on the ground. It was a terrible situation. Benimaru, please report the situation. Rimuru-sama, I am so glad that you are safe. As soon as he saw me, Benimaru's expression turned joyful, and he gave me a rough report. In this regard, thought transmission is extremely convenient. So Veldura lost. I haven't lost yet. Milim was also defeated. It hasn't been done. While Veldura was fighting Ivaraje, only his voice responded. As soon as Milim got up, she showed her competitive spirit. It's good to see that he's doing well, but it's true that Ivaraje is a real pain. All that was left was the enemy boss, or so I thought, but it turned out to be incredibly strong. This is a common story in manga. In addition to that, there was the resurrection of Veldanava. It seemed that Dino and the others had already spread the word about Veldanava's existence without me having to explain it. I thought about it positively, as it saved me a lot of trouble. The dilemma is what to do about Feldway. I saw Feldway lying on the ground. No matter how you look at it, he is dying. Setting aside the question of what death means to a spiritual life form, it seemed that the energy was continuing to flow out, and it would only be a few hours until it was completely depleted. Q-fu-fu-fu-fu, that looks good, Feldway. Diablo provoked them. Living up to his reputation as a master of provocation, Diablo is merciless towards his opponents, no matter the time, place, or situation. HMPH, I was stupid. That's right, that's all I can say. He seemed genuinely remorseful, but the extent of his mistake was so terrible that I didn't feel like comforting him. You've only just realized this now. Oh dear, this is why you're so stupid. Diablo is harsh. In other words, stupid is not a word you would use to describe someone. That's some pretty serious insults. People might say it behind someone's back. But I don't think anyone would say it to their face. But since the person in question is Feldway, there's no need to sympathize. Hey, Diablo, even if it's true, don't say that. Dino was trying to reprimand him, but there was some venom in his words. It seems I wasn't the only one who thought so. Dino isn't following up either. Isn't that a good idea? He should reflect on his actions, and I'd like to complain about it to my heart's content. That's true, but saying that to someone who's dying, well, at the very least, if Feldway hadn't held Lord Veldanava back, we would have died a long time ago. In this way, Pico and Gracia were also confiding their complicated feelings to each other. It seemed that he shared the same feelings as Dino, but his attitude was a little indecisive. Obra also seemed to have some thoughts on the matter, but she drew a line and didn't join in the conversation. It was Zarario who came rushing over who intervened. I was curious and came over, and it's Feldway. Why are you dying? He declared, glaring at Feldway. Feldway smiled at Zalario. I wanted to apologize to you too. I'm sorry, Zalario. Huh, is it too late now? HMPH, I don't have much time left. Feldway laughs with self-deprecation. Then, as he thought back on his past actions, he began to speak as if he were repenting, regretting, and regretting. You see, I was blind. I believed that this was Lord Veldanava's wish, and without questioning my actions, I continued to commit foolish acts. There is no way to atone for my sins, but there is one last thing I regret. Dino, Pico, and Gracia. Obra. And then there's Zalario. I listened quietly. The final words of a former friend. You see, I want to rescue that person who continues to wander astray even now. The words he spoke solemnly were still as strong as ever, and contained unfading words of loyalty to his master. I was impressed by their spirit alone. However, it will be difficult to make that wish come true. If Veldanava had listened to her advice, he wouldn't have ended up in this situation. From what Velzard had said, it seemed like he was driven by dangerous thoughts. Even now, it is looking down on us from the sky, but there is only one reason why. It is not moving. Because Ivaraje is still alive and well. Rather than testing our strength, it seemed like he was trying to get the Ivarages to finish the matter on their own, without getting his hands dirty. Is that so? Maybe not. They don't seem to be wary of us. It doesn't seem like they're enjoying watching us struggle, or that they're waiting for something. It's unclear, but whatever their aim, we can deal with it, however. So don't let your guard down. Got it. I stood in front of Feldway, keeping a close eye on Veldanava. You couldn't do it, right? And yet you still intend to challenge Veldanava. Huff, that is my role. I must at least make use of this foolish body. Saying this, Feldway tries to stand up. But, however, that was enough to cause Feldway's arm to give way, and he fell to the ground. Again, in an embarrassing fashion. Even though he was so self-centered and cautious. Now it is a pitiful sight, unrecognizable from the past. I don't mean to sympathize, but I felt a little sorry for him. If I leave him like this, he'll probably die, but in the first place, can I help him? Yes, it is possible. Oh, so that's possible. In that case, I guess I'll just have to worry about it later. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, as the saying goes. Feldway is trying to stop Veldanava, so let's just accept that he's our ally for now. I have a policy of using anything that is available, so it only took a moment of hesitation. Good, good, then I will request your cooperation. I will help you from now on, so until we have dealt with Veldanava, you will be under our command. I interrupted Feldway and told him this unilaterally. For now, let's start with treatment. Leave it to me. Following my decision, Seal began work. He transformed his arm into a slime and swallowed Feldway. Rimuru-sama, surely even a fool like this would be given a part of your noble body, a slime weapon. Diablo lamented, saying things like this, but I wonder what he's trying to do. They're not particularly noble, and even before that, I have no idea what they're doing or how they're doing it. The truth was that even if people lamented it, it was none of my business. And so, the treatment was completed in no time. I tossed the now fully recovered Feldway aside. Feldway recovered. He looks stunned, but I leave him alone. What's important is the future direction. In terms of unity of will, is it okay to aim to defeat Veldanava as well? As a member of society, it is natural to reach a consensus. If a policy is not decided at this point, the project may fall apart along the way. That was what I was thinking when I asked the question, but that's not an easy thing to say. Rumina's got angry at me. Even I can't revive him, so what's going on? She's muttering things like that, but I wish she'd stop taking her anger out on me. I don't understand it either, so I would like to ask Seal to take up such complaints. I knew you were an idiot, but do you really think you can beat your brother? Velgren was astonished. Glancing sideways at Feldway, I thought to myself, he must be thinking he can win, but that's not how I intend to do it. We were all filled with the feeling that we should all do our best. Rimuru-san, you will hire me once everything is finished, right? Was there any need to say that now? I mean, it's Ramirez who's hearing you. Not only me, but even Pico and Gracia are amazed at Dino's laid-back attitude. I haven't lost. If I try my best, I can win. Are you still saying that? Veldora was still in the middle of a melee with Ivaraje, even though he was pretty beaten up, he still managed to shout out in a clever way. It's obvious now that Veldora has a weakness for beautiful women. It was a meaningless assumption to say, if I give it my all, when I couldn't give it my all. Even I have no problem if I'm in perfect condition. In Milim's case, she was too violent. They too were using Veldora as a shield and desperately fighting back, but they were being pushed back. It's fine to be competitive, but I think you should face reality a little. There were others like Hinata who seemed to want to say something, but I understood that it was not a matter of reaching a consensus. If they were struggling against Ivaraje, then they'd be helpless if Veldanava joined the fight. What will you do, Rimuru? Velzard asked me with a bright smile. Why are you asking me? Guy is here too, so you should ask him for his opinion. 2. Something seems to be going very wrong. I felt like I could sense an evil presence. Someone trying to push all the responsibility onto me. Maybe it's just my imagination. Not true, absolutely not. Well, the conclusion is that there's no choice but to defeat it, so there's no point in worrying about it. I wonder if your sister is on our side too. That's right, as long as I have Guy, that's fine. What a coincidence. As long as I have Masayuki, that's enough for me. The dragon species, sisters engaged in a self-centered conversation. Whether they won or lost, it was fine as long as their way of life didn't waver. I would like to follow his example, but for me, that alone is not enough. A battle only has meaning if it is won. So, I would like to consider a positive strategy. Rimuru-kun. No, that proposal is rejected. You haven't said anything yet. It's too late now that you've said that, but to begin with, I don't have any good memories of when you used to call me Kun. As soon as I heard Guy's soothing voice, I immediately rejected it. Guy complained, but it was none of my business. I welcome a positive meeting, but no matter how I look at it, they were just trying to push the trouble onto me. Well, that's fine. I'll take on Ivaraje, you just keep Veldanava under control. Teeth. Guy had promised to keep Veldanava company, but before I knew it, the deal had changed. I don't remember agreeing to it, so I would like to try to argue, but it seems like this is not the time for that. I'm telling you to buy time. You're good at that, right? Well, I'm good at it. But why do I have the most important role? You see, I was tired from dealing with the out-of-control Milim. Forget about that story. That's right, don't bring up old stories. No, this isn't something that happened in the past. It's something that